Welcome back to Laker Debaters, and right now we're going to talk about a story that has just been captivating the world of sports lately. It's Ndamukong Suh being suspended for stomping on a Packers player's arm during a Thanksgiving game. Not just a game, a Thanksgiving game against the Green Bay Packers, who are undefeated. He got suspended 2 games. This is the 4th time he's been in trouble. Do you think 2 games was enough?
I would say it's fair. I know people are saying that it's too harsh. I don't think it's too harsh. I think, they honestly could have went further. I mean, the precedent set a couple years ago in Albert Haynesworth, then the Tennessee Titans stomped on the head of Cowboy center Andre Gurode. Granted, it wasn't as, Gurode was a, step on his head, helmetless head, and he was suspended for 5 games. I mean, Suh has a history of disciplinary problems. In the play itself, you see him smacking the head of the lineman a couple times, not talking. Probably some unpleasantries were exchanged, and then he stepped, he said he was just trying to get off and trying to avoid the situation, but then he stomped right on his arm. I mean, if Haynesworth gets 5 games for that, that's the precedent for that kind of offense. So I think giving him 2 games for what Suh did, I think is perfectly fair. They could have went higher. I think they could have given him 3 games. And I wouldn't have had a problem with that either.
I think you're focusing only on the incident that occurred on Thanksgiving. You have to remember that the way Roger Goodell set the precedent with player discipline, if you're a repeat offender, you get more games. I remember Pac-Man Jones, I think he got a whole season for being in trouble but never getting arrested, never charged. But Suh, this is the 4th time. He's been fined 3 times before this. He's been fined over $200,000 counting this incident. And he didn't even admit to it. There's video evidence. You can see him doing it. He still denied it.
Yeah.
I don't know how he thought nobody was going to notice. He's like, oh, yeah, you didn't see that. That was Photoshop. I don't know what he was thinking.
It's crazy.
And he didn't really apologize. He apologized when he was threatened with suspension.
Yeah, after the fact he was.
So I think they should have given him 4 games, because 4 games is just, it seems like an even number. It's not the whole season. And it would give him saying, listen, we're not going to take this anymore. You need to play like a normal person on the field. Because remember, with Atlanta, when Matt Ryan got hurt, he was talking trash, saying, get him off the field. We'll do that to every quarterback. He's very unpleasant.
He's young. He's a great player, skills-wise. But he needs to learn about the way to carry yourself on the field.
And the way to learn that is to set an example by suspending him for more than 2 games.
If this doesn't teach you, 2 games without 2 games without pay is still a lot. Don't get me wrong. But 3 or 4 games without pay, I said 3, you said 4, but I think we can both agree that there should be some kind of precedent set to deter this kind of behavior.
Well, in that game, Suh and the Lions were playing against the Green Bay Packers, who moved to 11-0 on the season. So they are clearly the best team in the NFC and NFL, arguably. But who do you think is the biggest threat to them in the NFC?
Well, I would say it's the team that the Lions are playing this week, the New Orleans Saints. They looked great, honestly, on Monday night against the Giants. No, the Giants look pretty bad, but the Saints look really great. Their offense, I know their offense is, championship caliber, just like the Packers. But, they're first in the NFL in passing. Drew Brees, if it wasn't for Aaron Rodgers, would be right on his way to an NFL MVP. And the kind of, what they have that I don't know if the Packers have as much of is the running game. Because the Saints are 8th in the league in rushing, which is, that's honestly higher than what I would expect, just because, they've kind of bounced around between a couple of different running backs. But, so are the Packers. So I think the Saints had some tough losses. They're 8-3 in the year now. Once you get in the playoffs, they'll win the division. They'll get in the playoffs, and from there, who knows? I think if there's one team in the NFC who can beat that can beat the Packers, I think it's the Saints.
Well, the Packers already beat the Saints, so we'll leave that for another day. But I was thinking about going with the Falcons here, because the Saints may not definitely win the division. The Falcons are right on their tail. But I was going to go with the Dallas Cowboys. They have been, ever since DeMarco Murray took over at running back, they have just been on fire. And Tony Romo, he gets flack for being inconsistent or whatever. As inconsistent as he's been and getting ripped on, 4th best quarterback rating in the league behind Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, and Drew Brees. That's it. He's doing better than any other quarterback by quarterback rating standards in the whole league. And DeMarco Murray, as I mentioned, his first start, he had 250 yards. and he's been averaging 6 yards a carry on the season.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And he's had, I think, in 5 of his 6 games, he's had at least 70 yards in the first half. So he's just been phenomenal, and their offense is just clicking on all cylinders. Laurent Robinson has even been a great target. Their offense is really good, but that's not why I think they're the biggest thing. They have a great defense, too. DeMarcus Ware is leading the league in sacks.
Yes, he is.
They're giving up about 40 less yards per game than the Saints are, 3 less points per game, which doesn't sound like a lot, but if you put it together over a whole season, that's a lot of points. And I just think overall they are a better test for the Packers because they can slow down the Packers. You saw the Saints against the Packers. They had no answer for them. So I think the Cowboys could quell the Packers' offense a little. I'm not saying stop. I don't think anyone can stop the Packers' offense, but they could quell it. They could slow it down and give their offense a chance, whereas the Saints, their D looks pretty bad sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, their pass defense is 27th in the league. I'll give you that. But, I mean, they find a way to win most games. And, even if they give up 21, 28 points, they'll score 42, 49 points. And that's the way it's been all year. I mean, high-scoring games, but they usually end up on top of them. So. That's
true. And we'll talk. That's what we think will be in the top of the NFC. Let's talk about the AFC now. There's a lot of debate over the AFC's best team, whereas the NFC, it's definitely the Packers. The AFC could go to one of a couple teams. Who are you going to go with?
I have to. I have to go with my New England Patriots. They had a rough patch in the middle of the season. They lost 2 in a row. Wasn't happy about that. But their comeback, they looked great last week. They looked great actually the last couple weeks. They're 8-3 in the year, going against the less than dominant Indianapolis Colts this weekend. So we should chalk one up in the W column for that one. And I will be the first one to admit their defense is pretty bad. They're last in the league in pass defense, middle of the pack in rushing defense. Actually 12th in the league, which is it's above average. But their offense, second in the league in passing. The running backs are again middle of the pack, but they find a way to win. Like their defense gives up a lot of yards. I mean, there's a reason why they're 32nd league in pass defense. They give up more 300 yards a game passing. But somehow they hold the opponent in the red zone. They gave up 400 yards to Vince Young last week, but they still held them. They gave up over 300 yards to Mark Sanchez 3 weeks ago. Again, held them. It's like for some reason they like to just give up all the yards, and then when it comes to crunch time, they settle down and be the Patriots from old.
But the old adage is defense wins championships. So what I'm going to go with is a defensive team that doesn't lose to teams like the Bills and the Baltimore Ravens, who are undefeated against teams above 500. They have an amazing defense. I think they just give up just over 16 points a game, which is, I think, 3rd best in the league. They have one of the best pass defenses in the league. They've always had a good rush D. Their offense, it's not great, but they have Ray Rice, who's a very dynamic player, and that you have to game plan for him all the time, plus some dynamic receivers. I know you're going to say Flacco.
I'd say, who'd you rather have, Joe Flacco or Tom Brady behind center?
Who would you rather have, the Ravens' defense or the Pats' defense? I think there's way bigger of a difference between the Pats' defense and the Ravens' defense than there is in Flacco and Brady. Because Flacco, I don't like Flacco. I'll be the first to admit it. I can't stand him as a quarterback. But you know what? When he's on, he's pretty good.
All right.
When he's off, he's awful.
I believe I watched a game of the Ravens versus the Jags earlier this season, and Flacco, and the entire Ravens offense, and it just looked like trash.
You can say that, but the Ravens, it looks like they just take games off to me because they'll lose to teams they should beat, and they'll beat every team that they shouldn't beat or they should be close with.
Championship teams, the best team in conference, those caliber teams can't take games off. Like those are the kind of teams that are the underachieving teams. I mean, this year Baltimore has had a good record, but in the past they've underachieved, honestly.
Well, I'm going to disagree with you on that, but we're going to have to go to a quick commercial break. When we come back, we'll talk about a new manager in baseball for one of the biggest teams in the sport. So stay tuned. You're watching Laker Debaters on WTOP.